it's not a sprint, it's more of an ultra marathon. It really takes a lot of time, persistence, patience, and you have to really believe in your content.
Welcome to Global VID, a podcast about original TV and film productions and its international potential. I'm your host, Eric Y. Lapointe. Let's learn from each other and the experts within our field. Welcome to Global VID's 25th episode. I can't believe it. It's crazy. Recently, we celebrated Vancouver and British Columbia's production industry, and today I'm super pleased to take Global VID back to my French-Canadian roots to talk about yet another major production hub, the province of Quebec. With a population of over 8 million people and its own French-speaking star system, Quebec continually punches above its weight and works with very limited budgets to create high-quality, world-class content. So not too far behind BC, Quebec produces approximately $2.4 billion worth of productions every year. But the difference is that most of the productions are homegrown, original content. Now let's get inspired and start the conversation. Hello, Mélanie, Kathleen, and Barbara. How are you?
Great.
Good.
How are you?
I'm good. So thank you so much for spending your time with me this morning and evening or early evening for you, Barbara, because you
That's
are
correct.
in Germany. We'll explain that in just a moment. So for those folks out there who are not familiar with the three of you, please introduce yourselves, and perhaps I'll mix it up and let's start with Barbara Vallant.
Well, hello, and thank you for this invitation. So my name is Barbara Vallant. I'm a French-Canadian expat living in Munich, Germany. That's Bavaria.
And what company do you work for?
I represent formats under the umbrella of Aroma TV. So I represent various production companies from Quebec and sell their content globally.
Okay, great. And one of your biggest clients is KOTV, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. So I work very intensely with KOTV.
Thank you. And thanks for saying it in English. So we're going to try not to speak in Franglish, and it's going to be hard for all of us not to speak in French, but we'll do our best. And Mélanie, please introduce yourself and your role.
Yeah, my name is Mélanie Ratté. I'm with Zone 3. I'm Senior Director of International Distribution and Business Development. So my role is basically to expand Zone 3's international footprint, not only through distribution of our content, but also through the creation of partnerships and, building a co-production project. So that's what I do.
And this is a new role for you. You mentioned that you started this role in August of 2021.
Yeah, precisely. I've always been into content creation. And over the years, I started going out to markets and getting very interested in, distributing our content because I could see, there was potential and that was underexploited. So we finally made the decision that I should, dedicate myself full time to this wonderful project.
Great. And Kathleen, please introduce yourself and your role.
Hello, I'm Kathleen Préfontaine, and I work for Aetios Productions. I'm the Director of Distribution and Development there for the last 6 years.
All right. Before we talk about the Quebec content and how it travels around the world, what inspired you guys to get into the TV business in particular and the TV business in Quebec?
It was actually a fluke. I didn't even know international television. I got into the business through my studies of marketing, and I got a job at a distributor in Montreal, which was called Distraction Formats. And I started there in marketing and learned about this business, and eventually moved on to being sales and trying to get shows around Quebec to travel the world. I'm always inspired by the creative of the Quebec productions, as well as how we're different, and we have great stories to tell to the world. So I'm always very happy to represent the shows.
And how was the switch from marketing to sales for you?
Seamless, actually. I did do sales classes during my studies. I got to know how to do it. At the same time, I don't find that it's sales. I find that it's more talking with creatives and learning about their shows and their ideas and share our stuff. So it was actually seamless. And I find that marketing is also very much part of it. So.
Right, exactly. And Barbara, what about you? I guess in your case, it's what inspired you to get into the TV business in Germany, but what inspired you to work back with the folks back home in Quebec?
So at the time I was looking for an international job, if you want, and I was always interested in entertainment. I studied in communication studies at Concordia, and I started selling an 80-second live segment around the world. So we had working for a company, they had unmanned cameras, and I was quite successful. I sold it to CNN and anyways, various channels around the world. And I started going to the markets. And then, as we know, it's a lot about networking. And then I met Michel Rodrigue from Distraction. And then he said, would you be interested in eventually selling content from Quebec? And that was for me like a dream come true, because as a Canadian expat, I felt very far from Quebec, from my roots. This was a great way for me to export culture and to get closer to my roots.
That's amazing. I can relate to that a little bit after moving from Montreal to Vancouver. And Mélanie, how about you? What inspired you to get into the TV space?
Well, it was never a question of doing international in the first place,
Right.
Back when I was studying at university. I started studying journalism, and very quickly, I decided that it wasn't for me. It was too depressing, and I'm a team player, and, TV seemed to me like it offered so many opportunities to meet great people and to work as a team and to reinvent the world, in so many ways. There are so many stories to tell. And I've always been a culture lover and a content oriented person. So it seemed like a natural fit for me. What I also love about what appealed to me was that connection you could make, with your community, that sense of sharing something, with a large group of people at the same time and relating to something very specific. That's something that sounded pretty magical to me.
Did you feel the same way when you started going international?
When you take your content to the world and you realize that, in some parts of the world, your content is just as appreciated, there's magic in there as well.
So what makes Quebec content so unique? I mean, it really punches above its weight in so many ways. Here in Canada, we have a population, or the province has a population of just over 8 million. And as the last statistics were, $2.4 billion worth of productions happening out of Quebec. So there's so much happening. What makes Quebec content so unique?
One of the signature pieces of Made in Quebec content is definitely the quality of the writing. I think that authors, and this is what I've heard from, I've been in the business for a couple of years now and had very interesting conversations with writers. And they told me that in Quebec, it seems that they have more leeway. They can take more risks, if you want, in the way that they write, how far they go. What's considered edgy in France or in Germany is not at all considered edgy in Quebec. So I think that the whole creative process and coming up with a really amazing story, of course, it starts with the writing. And if writers have more space and are given that permission to go how far they want, or at least, to take those risks.
Okay. And do you see the same thing, Mélanie?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with Barbara. But historically, as a minority, we've always been used to strive, evolving with the French language, as a barrier, but also it meant that we were evolving in a very protected market. Our talent is used to finding solutions, working quick. They have a lot of freedom. They're versatile. It's not rare that you'll see a great director, who has done kids shows and then a feature film going to the Oscars, and the next day, a great TV series. We have a long history of creating our own IP as well, because we have very strong star system. And even though we have smaller budgets, we are very lucky that broadcasters do commission. They do commission a lot. So that's given the whole industry so many opportunities to work on different projects across different genres. You know, like when you look at a production structure in Quebec, you know, the roles are very limited. You know, you don't have like 6 executive producers
Right.
and I don't know how many writers. You know, usually our series are written by one writer. You know, that's usually what you will see. You know, very rarely will you see a writer's room with 10 writers. You know, we don't have that here. So we're working as a team and we're focusing on solution. And there's a lot of creativity and everybody's working together. And for the anecdote, maybe I can just say that at the beginning of the pandemic, you know, we were shooting a fiction series, and because of the social distancing, you know, there was not enough time to rewrite all the scripts and all the scenes where, you know, the actors had to kiss and everything. You know, there was no time to rewrite everything. So the makeup artist just teamed up with the director and they created this prosthesis that's called the Kiss Guard. And now it's selling, you know, in the United States and everywhere, you know, so they could, you know, just basically keep the scenes as is and do whatever they had to do with the Kiss Guard, you know, and that's teamwork, you know.
That's amazing.
That's being solution oriented. So that's how we work. So that's definitely giving us an edge, I think.
I bet you there's a lot of actors out there that wish that existed a long time ago.
Yeah.
I don't want to kiss that person.
Hi there, this is Michelle Simone Miller from Mentors on the Mic podcast. Every week I share an interview with an incredible mentor in the entertainment industry. I focus on how they started and how they moved up to where they are today. People like showrunner and co-creator of Friends, Marta Kaufman, 5-time Emmy-winning producer and director Rob Burnett, who is the head writer of The Late Show with David Letterman at only 29 years old, to actor-director Tony Goldwyn from Scandal. We learn together how these incredible mentors started, their first job, and any advice they have along the way. Check out Mentors on the Mic wherever you listen to podcasts, and make sure to subscribe, comment, and share the Global VID podcast.
And we touched upon, Barbara touched upon the flexibility for the writers. And when we last spoke together, we also talked about how progressive content in Quebec and Canada in general can be. And that's part of that as well. And Kathleen, how do you see that, like with all the productions that your company works on?
Definitely starts with the broadcaster as well, that is always open. We do a lot of shows, scripted shows about social issues, whether it's women present, pregnant teenagers, and the broadcasters are always open to talking about these stories. They're daring, definitely, which helps the authors feel like they have the leeway to go maybe further. And I think it's great that we have that free space to talk about hard issues. And I think that also television is a great way to move forward, open other people to other stories, other situations that they're not familiar with.
Now, I mean, we'll talk more about bringing Quebec content to the world in just a moment, but how difficult is it sometimes to take these progressive stories, these hard issues, and trying to sell them abroad, even to France and Germany?
It's super easy. Why do you say it's difficult? Where do you hear that from?
I don't know. I thought it'd be maybe difficult.
Obviously, some territories are, more difficult than others, but then every story can travel. It depends. Sometimes you just need the right partner to understand, and sometimes to adapt it more to their situation, their culture and customs. We'd be surprised at how many other countries are ready to be daring and see that these shows actually work as well. they work well here and they think that perhaps it could work well there. And socially, it does help as well, open conversation. And so no, people are always open to hear about different stories, and it's very, yeah.
No, and I think it's of course as well a question of timing. It's a question of relevancy in the subject matter. So, you have a lot of boxes to check, and luck. You have to be lucky as well. I mean, it's part of the game. If you speak to the right person at the right time who's looking exactly for that idea, then you have a deal. But I have, situations where we have a series which is now in development, which I've been trying to sell for the last 4 or 5 years now. So it's not a sprint, it's more of an ultra marathon. It really takes a lot of time, persistence, patience, and you have to really believe in your content. You're very proud of the authors, of the actors who are involved. So it gives you that extra, how would I say, that extra push to keep, on trying. And, we get, as we know, we get a lot of no's. It's not like, it's not a walk in the park. It's often an uphill battle, but the payoff is amazing, when someone says yes and wants to go in development and yeah.
Yeah.
I also think that progressiveness is acceptable when it comes from an authentic place.
Okay.
When your content is progressive, but it's authentic, it comes from who you are as a culture, as a nation. I think people understand, that when it comes from an authentic place, that it can be acceptable in less progressive societies as well.
8 million people live in Quebec. The actual original production budgets are around 1.2 billion, and that's the biggest in Canada for original productions. So what other nations are comparable?
I mean, we all know that Israel, Scandinavia,
the Netherlands, I would say, Belgium as well. When I talk with producers, we talk about the same things,
Okay.
It's very, very similar.
Maybe Poland too could be in there for the population and the star system that they have. And yeah, but I agree with my colleagues.
All right, so let's move on to taking Quebec content across the globe, which is ultimately what the three of you are responsible for. Before we dive into what you're doing now and all that, let's maybe take a step back and talk about some early success stories that really put Quebec on the map across the globe. And maybe we can start with you, Kathleen and Barbara, because you both worked for Distraction, which produced one of the most popular formats in the world.
We were distributors and not producers, just to be clear, but definitely, I think it's still the same, but the scripted format that was mostly adapted around the world was called Love Bugs. In French, it was Un gars, une fille.
Mm-hmm.
And that really traveled around the world for 30-something countries, I believe. It was one of the first times that people thought, hey, I don't need to just broadcast with dubbing or subtitling. I could actually adapt. Quite simple as a format too, with a guy, a girl. It's just couple funny little sketches. And that definitely probably put Quebec as a format scripted. And I think to this day, it's still the number one format, scripted format that was mostly adapted.
As it was a universal theme, of the couple. So it was very relevant to so many territories. And as Kathleen mentioned, it's simple. Everyone got it. It was not expensive to produce, cost effective, as we like to say. And yeah, that's why I think a lot of countries were drawn to this format.
And Melanie, what about you? What success stories stands out the most for you?
Well, our success stories were mostly with our drama series, Minuit le Soir, around midnight, that created a big buzz in France in around 2007 or 8, something like that, if I'm not mistaken. We've also had a lot of success with Le Cœur a ses raisons, Themes of Love in English, written by Marc Brunet, who is an amazing creator whose work exports very well. We've worked with Marc Brunet on another sketch comedy series entitled Like Moi. Like Moi was a success story in Quebec, but it's also been adapted in France and Germany. We've had a couple of non-scripted formats adapted elsewhere also, because we do both. We do scripted and non-scripted. So we're working on both fronts.
So now all three of you take this content around the globe. What has been kind of some of the success stories you have seen in the last few years now with your own businesses?
I may say, well, Plan B is obviously the most popular series of KOTV, which was successfully adapted in France, in Belgium, and now in development in Germany. Jean-François Asselin and Jacques Drolet are the writers of this amazing series, and it's an anthology series. So it permits the client to actually choose. He doesn't have to start with season 1. He can start with season 2 if he prefers that storyline. So it's an interesting concept, if you want, of how to go along with the format. And this is really, I would say, in terms of format and the structure of the series, it's a very pure format. You have to respect the mechanism. We go back in time, so you have to stick to the writing. And just as a background information, it took the writers about 7 years to come up with the first Plan B, because they had to get the mechanism and the storyline correct, because the idea is, oh, if I could change something in my life, could I do it? And if I could, what would I do? So you can go back in time and change that certain event, but by changing something, there are other events around that will obviously be affected and impacted by this change. So it's quite complex, so you don't want to confuse the viewer. And so just to give you that idea, is that it took 7 years for them to come up with the mechanism. So of course, when pitching to producers, let's say in Germany now, they don't have to go through those 6-7 years of development. It's there, it's ready, it's a proven success. And if all goes well, it will be in production this year.
Okay, that sounds like a really great project. You sold me, but I'm not buying. Oh, well.
I'm jealous. Yeah. Well, I have been doing this for, since very recently, but we've had recent successes with our teen drama series called Les Petits Rois, entitled in English. It's a pretty neat teen drama series, pretty fresh, edgy, non-heteronormative, very progressive. So we were lucky, to make sales. And so it's been sold in France, Belgium, and Finland so far, and other territories are looking at it. Thank you. We've had success with our procedural dramedy called Edgar. It's now in France.
Filmed in Winnipeg, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a co-production with Magneto Media. So we've had success with that. And, speaking of scripted formats, we do have older scripted formats in our library. And it's also my role to revisit these older formats, because I do think that they have potential to go out on the international market. So I'm going to give them some love, and maybe you'll see some older stuff taking out to the market. And we have a very promising crime investigation series coming soon. It's created and directed by brilliant filmmaker Sophie de Raspe, who did Antigone et Signes Vitaux, Bête Noire, and so many others. Yeah, Dark Soul. So this one is coming out very soon. I'm taking it to Sérimania. It's already getting a lot of traction, I would say. So that's very exciting and promising.
Mélanie, how was it to sell to Finland? How was that process?
It took a while to make the decision, because the series is very progressive, and there was this one scene in the very first episode that could be a little bit shocking to for their viewers. So we had the discussion about why that scene was written and why it was there and why it was an essential scene. It was not just to provoke, it was there for a reason. And I think that the fact that the original series was commissioned by Radio-Canada, a public broadcaster who, cares for their young viewership, I think they understood that they could go there, in the end. So the process was amazing.
What was it, their first Quebecois series that they commissioned, or?
I don't know about that, but maybe. I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Kathleen, you work with Aetios, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yes.
Am I? Okay, good.
Yes.
And you've done quite a bit with shows like District 31 and Unité 9.
Well, our main show that is working well internationally is 30 Lives. We're the only producers of daily shows in Quebec. And this is a daily that was on air for 6 seasons, 120 episodes a season that we produce. And that one was sold to Global in Brazil. They're the biggest producers of telenovelas, and they adapted it to their market. It's the story of a teacher and the 29 students in the class. So it's very adaptable for sure. And you can also change a bit of the stories with the culture and stuff and the time right now, the students. And so that worked really well in Brazil. They even won prizes for their version. And we just sold it to France as well. They did a season last spring. They did mostly hours though. And we also have an option right now in Flemish Belgium. So that's working quite well as adaptation. For District 31, we're actually for the ready to air, people actually interested in the show itself. So we're negotiating 4 territories right now. 2 are pretty much getting signed. I can't talk about them all yet, but that one is also a daily show. So that's 120 episodes. So no, that's working really well. And we also have Blue Moon, which is our big high-end action thriller that just got bought by Cachette for the US market. So we're crossing our fingers for that one. And they're working on it right now. So no, things are traveling well and we have great hopes. And we have 3 new shows right now. So that's what I'm working on as well. And 2 comedies, which is something that we don't usually do. We're very drama. But I think that's what people need right now is a lot of comedy, lighter stuff. And so no, timing might be good.
Well, congrats to you as well. And congrats to all 3 of you. What are some of the challenges that you guys find when you're trying to go into a new market? Like perhaps somewhere, like you said, Finland's a good example here because it's like you had to kind of bring them on board a little bit with the concept. So as you guys are expanding, what challenges are you facing as well when selling scripted formats?
Language.
Yes. Even if it's French, it's Quebec French.
Language and production value.
When you say language, are you referring to ready-made, or you just mean the language barrier between the producers in Quebec that might be stronger in French and the producers in another country that are?
No, it's just that, buyers look at French language content as foreign language content, even in France. It's not considered at the same level as, let's say, an English language, series. And people, buyers have know less, about French language content, I feel.
They're not so familiar, yeah.
No, exactly. They don't have the fear of missing out,
Right.
As far as French language content is concerned. But I feel that it's slowly changing. I think Quebec content is on more and more people's radar. So that's a good thing. And the other obstacle is the production value, because despite the fact that we have amazing writers and we execute our series super well, you cannot compete with a multi-million-dollar, budget series, even if you think you're the best,
Right.
At the end of the day, it does count. That's a challenge that we're faced with as an industry.
Well, I would continue on the same line as Mélanie. I think she pointed out like the main challenges But as you said, Mélanie, I think that that's also slowly changing. You know, we see that we're before the pandemic, obviously more and more present in international markets. When I was in Berlin, there was the series C'est comme ça que je t'aime, which was presented, and it caused a storm. Like the cast was there. They were showing 2 episodes in the cinema in Berlin, and there were no tickets available. Like even the ambassador's wife didn't have a ticket, and she was like begging everybody to get in. And right beside there was Stateless from Cate Blanchett. And I mean, Cate Blanchett is obviously, you know, on a lot of people's radar and is well known, but everyone wanted to get into that cinema where we were showing. And I say we because I feel that I'm a part of the Quebec community, although I have nothing to do with the production or the distribution of that series. But there was such a, how do you say in English, frénésie, like everyone was just
a buzz, yeah,
buzz around that series. And I think that really showed like, wow, you know, Quebec content is attractive, it's appealing, and it creates that buzz so much that everyone like wants to get in.
No, I agree as well. The language was always an issue, but with all the new platforms, Netflix, Amazon, people, I think the audience though is getting used to watching stuff in other languages. They don't mind the subtitling anymore that much. They don't mind the dubbing that much. I think it's more of the broadcasters and the platforms themselves that you need to convince more, but I think the audience is showing them that it doesn't matter where the story comes from, as long as it's good. I want to see it. I want to hear about it. I want to watch it. So I think it's getting better, definitely. And yes, obviously, when you sell ready to air and you don't have the budgets that other countries have, then it's the quality of the productions that some of them have a higher level that we can't, you know, get to. But then when you do the format, you get them ideas of how to create it with, you know, and if they have more money, then they can do even more.
Mélanie touched upon the série mania market that happens in France right around the time of MIP TV. What makes that different than MIP TV, and why are more people starting to go towards series mania instead of MIP TV?
Well, I think it's a very niche market, so it really concentrates solely on fiction. I guess it's maybe as well a question of costs. I mean, MIP TV, MIPCOM is fairly expensive compared to série mania. You know, with the creation of this market, there's definitely a demand there for people who are just looking to buy series fiction. So that's the reason I think why it's so popular.
And is there something that makes the formula different? Like, are they doing screenings? Are they doing other things that?
There's a lot of screenings. There are a lot of panels. They have a lot of very prestigious as well, you know, casts and writers, showrunners who attend. So they really created a buzz around this série mania. And then they of course have awards. So if you win Best Fiction at série mania, now it's a nice title to have. It's something very prestigious. Can You Hear Me actually won. It was their first series fiction, their first fiction series, and it won Best Comedy at série mania now, I think, 4 years ago.
Probably, yeah.
And that sold then to Netflix after.
When you go to MIP TV and MIPCOM, it's like, you know, 13,000 people walking around. When you're just a few thousand, you get more time, you get maybe more opportunities to meet some people that will be a lot busier when they go to Cannes. You don't necessarily see the same people. So I think that's also why série mania is going well, is because it's very concentrated on, yes, the fiction people, the Europeans mostly. So you see a part of the people, and then if you go to MIP, then you don't need to see the same people again. So then you can concentrate on the more international, like Asia or South America or other territories. So I think that's also why people will go there.
Well, I was going to say they also make it very comfortable. You know, you feel like you're part of this one big family when you go to série mania. You know, it's not as hectic. as MIP-TV or MIPCOM. And what's also very interesting, I find, is that they have those coming next from sessions. And Quebec usually we take part, as an industry to those sessions. So this year we have a session coming next from Quebec. So our main broadcasters will showcase, the best that Quebec has to offer. So that's a very good
visibility
for us.
Yeah.
And I hope that you guys get the chance to go back to markets this year in full. I hope that we're starting to get there.
We were supposed to go to both, actually, Miss Cerimania and MIP-TV. I did go to Content London. That was my first market since the pandemic, but we'll see how things move along. I think it's starting to be hopeful. So
I'm looking at, Cerimania or for sure MIP-TV. I held back for various reasons, but
Sure.
I'm eager.
Well, I've been going to the markets.
I know Melanie's been traveling.
Yeah, I've been the courageous one.
That's right, because you went to MIPCOM, if I'm not mistaken, Mélanie. You were brave.
And Cerimania.
And Cerimania and Content London. So I'm the risk taker, I guess. But those who were there were very motivated. They were there for the right reasons. So there's always good business, to be done, even if the attendance is cut, by half.
All right. Thank you so much to all three of you for joining me today to have this conversation about Quebec content and taking it to the world. I really hope that we will get a chance to meet in person, see each other in person again sometime this year. I don't know when, but I wish you guys all the best.
Thank you
very much.
so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
And that concludes today's episode of Global VID. Thanks to our guests, Kathleen Préfontaine, Mélanie Ratté, and Barbara Vallant. And as always, our editor, Nicole Almeida, and our theme song composers, Amber Goodwin and Aaron Ross. And if you've made it this far, be sure to subscribe or follow us wherever you are. See you next time.